I'll put this one up and a couple others, and I'll clearly say this is today's discussion, and maybe I'll try and go, this one has some talk about water or whatever, it's different about it, or you can just scrub through. Okay, so on this tree thing, another thing is, I don't usually, now, not that it never happens, I don't always put the tree trunk like, straight, okay? Kind of do a little of that. You gotta let me warm up here a little bit. The one thing I like about starting these things not warmed up is that by the end of it, you'll see the difference. It's usually a huge difference, okay? I don't like that. See, that's starting to be symmetrical, which is my natural brain for some reason wants to go symmetrical. What was that?
Just a longer than 2-second honk.
That's everywhere.
Are you a honker?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Not really. Unless they're like in my way and I want them to get going or whatever. And I don't mind when people do that to me either if I'm sitting there, because I'm sitting there looking at my phone like an asshole at a stop sign and they go honk. I go, fair, that's fair. It's not cool. Okay, here's another thing. We'll start adding value. But I want to see good line work. Does that make sense? That's one of the most important things. Can you see from back there? You sure? One of the most important things. Okay? I mean, there's people in front of you. I don't know how you're seeing anything. Okay, so let's talk about this real quick. Clean value. Nice clean value. Now, there could also be chiseled lines. You can use it to make a telephone pole. You guys notice I'm working a lot off silhouette all the time for things that aren't really that important. That kind of thing, okay? Again, pencil does all kinds of things, okay? So I'm gonna go through this pretty quick. And I'm just kind of using a standard leaf shape. Now, if it was a maple leaf or whatever, let's go like that, whatever that leaf is. Then I'm gonna start using that, especially down, when I'm knocking in these leaves. But then at some point I'm going to start to develop sort of a quick scribble language in the interior. Okay, now when I say scribble language, a lot of people will go, oh, okay, like that. No, not like that. It's based on what I'm drawing.
When you say scribble language in the interior, are you saying like the point in between like the light and the shadow?
Kinda.
Okay.
I'm not going to go in and, I don't want to go in and draw everything. And it doesn't look good anyway, Drawing everything, every little detail or whatever you want to call it, doesn't look good. Right? What's that? From now on, if a phone goes off, you'll be strangled.
Let me check.
Who's going to be strangling us?
Nick. He's in better shape than
You guys are going to be all right.
Nick's gonna be like, I don't like doing this. My dad, my dad grew up on a farm. My dad grew up on a farm, and they'd go get a chicken for dinner, and you'd have to wring its neck, which is like you grab it and whatever you do, and you kill it like that.
Yeah.
And he goes, he wouldn't do it anymore because he goes, it doesn't die because I can't stand doing this, and it's like cruel, and he just wouldn't do it.
I grew up on a farm too, Northern
Yeah.
California. I hated that.
Yeah, I don't want to kill nothing. I was talking to my girlfriend about this yesterday. I go, you know what kind of thing I think would be neat is fly fishing. I think there's a neat tradition to fly fishing. But I go, I don't want to kill fish,
Yeah.
so I can't do it, you know? And she goes, oh, you can throw them back. And I go, oh, that's cool. So I can just torture them.
Yeah, that's
And
what
then,
my
go, hey, man, you're lucky. I let you go.
Yeah.
I think it's weird, that whole thing.
I'm cruising myself out for you.
Hmm?
My dad got people to pay him to climb coconut trees
Oh.
for kicks. He grew up on
So I'm going to go real quick now. Now I can also put a mass here. What are you guys doing? Sometimes you'll get a branch that'll come out and have a mass, right? The mass basically is a Rorschach test. It's just you gotta, you mass it sort of like that, okay? Again, now if I was out here and this is a specific leaf, I might add that specific leaf in there, because then I'm giving the viewer more information. Even doing those three kind of changes the nature of it, okay? This is going to be under the canopy, so it's going to get a little bit of shadow value. We'll go bigger up here.
So this way of doing trees, is this more like if you had a tree in the midground?
It depends. I can make it look pretty detailed in the foreground.
Okay.
I just might put a few more leaf shapes and things in it, but that's really all it requires. Because you are not going to draw a relief.
Yeah.
But what I might do is, if I'm closer, I might do what I just said. I might put a few more of this indication of a real, of the actual specific leaf shape. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm going to come in here and maybe give it a little, if the light's coming here. Again, I can start to go. It's not going to be hitting solid ground, so it's going to have, if I can see the roots maybe, I can put some grass here. I could put another type of bush or something here. Like a low little. By the way, it usually takes me about a day to get the videos up whenever I put them up, because I gotta edit them. So I can edit out all the nonsense out of them. I try to get them edited to their just the techniques and all that stuff.
Are you gonna edit this part out?
Which part?
You talking about editing?
Yeah. No, probably not that. Only stuff that, like if we're talking, okay, so like I was just talking about culture around design. I'll probably edit stuff like that out. It's not on this, but that kind of thing I'll edit out.
But the chicken stuff stays?
The chicken might stay. Depends on what I'm doing here. If I'm doing anything relevant here, then it'll stay.
Will there be a foliage assignment like the building drawings?
Yes, we're gonna do 4 pages.
4?
I usually do 4 pages. It's a trick. I want to see if you do more. Does that make sense?
Thank you for the insight. I will take that into note.
Because I go, oh, you don't like to draw. Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I taught a long time ago just a little bit for fun.
Hmm?
I taught a long time ago just a little bit for fun. And there was this guy in the class, and they had to keep I can't remember what the class was, but they had to keep a sketchbook. And sometimes I'd go, hey, everybody pop open the sketchbook because I want to see where you're at. And this guy always had like one drawing. I go, you're in an animation program. What are you doing? And he always had all these excuses. And I go, and it was a private school. And I go, you're wasting like $100,000 of your parents' money. It's not cool. And you're never going to work because you don't care. You know what I mean? I go, you're doing this because you think it's cool. You're not doing it because you're passionate about it. And he Then he disappeared for about a month. No, more than that. He disappeared for like 2 months. Then he tried to wander back into class unnoticed, which was weird. And, hey, what are you doing? And then he was so not together that I go, oh, he goes, let me talk to you. And you can see I'm starting to build that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's weird that works.
Hmm?
It's weird that works. Like, it's not much.
It's not. That's my point. I can come in here and just trick the hell out of that if I want to. You know, I could come in here and I would do that. I usually do this. I'll come in here and I'll start separating a little more. I'll put some specific leaf shapes down here. This is my point, by the way. That's a good comment. Because what is this about? And why was I a technique freak when I was in school? Because I figured out at some point after I got around people who were super good that like everything is not what you think. I go, oh, painting is not at all what I thought it was. The tools do all the work. The technique does all the work. Like if you can get that part of it down, then you just feel like you're channeling. You just feel like you're channeling stuff. It doesn't really feel like you're really doing anything. You just feel like you're sort of guiding it, and the cosmos are doing it. You know what I mean? Which I think is super cool. That's the X factor, right? But where does the X factor come from? It really comes from really good technique, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I want to get really dark in here, I could get in here and, you know, knock in some dark shapes, really dark shapes in here. Look at that point, Nick. It's still there. Right? Now, part of that's probably because I'm on the side of my pencil so much.
Yeah.
And I'm almost sharpening it. Okay, now if you're going to do something like a rock, you got to look at these like rocks are basically just a bunch of planes. Does that make sense? And you got to see the planes because then you can sort of just come in here and it's going to have grass down here. It's a little hard right there. This side will come down and get darker. But they're just a bunch of planes like that. Does that make sense? So look for the planes, right? And start off with some rocks that are really obvious. They're all over the place. You know, and then when you start putting the stuff around it, it'll start to work. It's always going to come down into here. You know, I'll put some little texture things on it. Even round rocks, if you notice, will have little planes on them. They're not just this. You know, they have a little plane there, and they'll have a plane here and one here. Does that make sense? But they're just series of planes, okay? If you look at them, you can see them, you can break them down. You know, they have that little chip in the side like that. And they're basically that. And then I'll come in here and I'll just give them. You know, more like that. You know, something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's just planes. Just look for the planes. But whatever, that's that. Let's put this here. Okay, so let's go. I can get into little textural things. Now, this is where I start to get into a scribble language. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
But I'm not doing this. Like, you know, I'm basing it on something. Now, what I usually do, let's say that this is one of those things that has some, you know, those ones that have some branches at the bottom and then they come up. reason I like doing that is I can get a more natural sort of look to it. And by the way, I'm always looking at what I'm drawing, so if I have a branch that does this, it's nice and smooth. You know, then it's going to have a leaf mass here, then some individual leaves, right? Is it a knuckly branch that goes like that? Sometimes they have a little bulge right there. Maybe this one's a little more textured. Less leaves, maybe it's a little dead. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing with these, you know, kind of. Bamboo, we could go. There's my horizon line. That's a little too bulky, that's all right. You know, then they have these. Right? Simple, right? We're trying to keep this simple. Then I could just, you know, place all these. We'll probably go to the zoo, which is also a botanical gardens. Okay, so anyway, this one. This, I'm assuming, I mean, even if I'm close, this is going to be pretty, just real texturally. I'm going to see these leaves is more of a texture than anything. Now, lights here. I can unify all this underneath again, so I'm going, okay, how much can I not do here? Look how much I can not do there. Does that make sense? I can not do a lot. This is going under. All right, let's go here. I want to put a little value in there. And then I'm going to go, okay, now I got to get these values relative to each other. I'm going to reinforce some of this. I'm losing some of that. Down here, this kind of thing usually has a lot of leaves. Now, another thing is I'm always putting leaves that are breaking off, okay? Because as a distance, I'm not going to see that little spindly, whatever you call it, branch, or whatever it is, twig. These tend to get a lot of these little broken leaves. A lot of this stuff in here. And then I'll put some texture up here. Certain things I will tighten up. Does that make sense? So some of these can become just really about texture like that, especially if they're further away. But it's controlled. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
And it's always like I look at it and I go, how does this thing work?
So I know some plants, they do have fruit on it. So like, how would you draw like fruit and stuff like on them?
It's just going to be a shape in here somewhere, right? Am I seeing it in? is it out where I can see it? Then it's probably going to be lighter. Is it, some of them are back here? You know, are they in clumps like that? Yeah, I might see one or two down here. Some will be hidden behind. Some will be hidden back here. You know, and then I might get one like that. You know, maybe this little.
How would you tackle like a brush line or a group of trees like out looking in the forest or something like that?
Like if this had a tree line behind it, now you're going to get further away. And let's say it's up in the mountains. Because they do have apple trees up in the mountains because it's a microclimate. You guys ever go to Oak Glen?
Yeah.
So I'm going to start putting these little, what do you call them? Pine trees, right? And then these would go into silhouette. They're far away. You're not going to get a lot of information there.
Are you doing the shading going up and down like that? Is there a reason you went that way and not like left to right?
This is very easy.
Okay.
Well, it's two things. This is, I'm going to put some stuff down here.
What type of paper did you say that you use?
I use Hammermill. I think this is 32 pound, and I think it's called digital copy paper, which is such a stupid name. But, because I just think it's confusing. It sounds like somebody who came from the Xerox era named it. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, it's printer paper. It's 32 pound printer paper.
I think using the drawing board with the clips and like the loose paper is kind of better fitting for this type of application.
I've gotten where I like, I mean, it's all personal, but I've gotten where I really like loose paper.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my, I mean, if you look at this one, there's in the back. Okay, does that answer whoever asked me this?
Yes.
And we can go a little further. Go ahead.
How'd you do like normal grass or like golf field grass?
It's probably just going to be small. It's probably going to be more of an overall texture or tone thing with a little bit of breaking. Does that make sense? Just real simple. I'm not going to get as crazy as that, maybe. Back here could be some mountains. By the way, I'm always turning my board to your point, Nick, to get the easiest way to draw these things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you're doing an ellipse, you don't want to be doing an ellipse like that.
Yeah.
I'm doing an ellipse like that. So I'll just turn the board wherever I got to turn it.
Gotcha. I was asking mainly, I wasn't sure if it's because it's a tree you want the direction of the lines.
It's that too.
Okay.
It is that. But sometimes direction doesn't matter. Right? And then one other thing I always do when I draw a forest, like a line of forest trees, I'll throw one off center. A dead one, usually. Because it breaks up the monotony of it. Does that make sense? A lot of times in a city scene, I'll put a telephone pole just slightly off center. Not always off center, but if you look in the city, man, there's a lot of them that are off center. That's those little galvanized bands they put on there. Right? These are those little ceramic things. I forgot what they're called. But say you put just enough silhouette in it, it looks believable. Right? It's hardly anything, but And then part of the reason I put that also is then I get a nice curve. That might go in front of a house or something that looks cool. It gives me a curve where everything's this. Right? So we're always looking for that. And it might give me a slightly off center, off kilter, just like that one. And then this one, put a little bird in there, or a big bird.
Big one, big fat one.
And the reason is because things like eagles, they only roost like in dead trees, right? I'm assuming because they have such a big wingspan, they could get tangled and, you know. So sometimes up in the mountains you'll go and there'll be one sitting right up on top of the tree like that. It's really cool.
What part of the mountains are you from?
I'm from Lake Arrowhead, but if you go up to, this could be a raven too. If you go up to Big Bear, you can find eagles up there. Yeah, it was really cool. So he made it. So now he's probably in Alaska. Because the parents, I think, keep their nest for a long time, forever, I think. So that's probably the same, the ones you're seeing are probably the same breeding, because they mate for life. Here's another thing. What I usually use an eraser for is to draw. So I might put a back line of trees here, like we just talked about with this, only pull them out. Or this way. If I wanted that kind of thing, okay? I use this a lot, where I create a tone and then I paint out of it, or I pull out of it, or I create a tone and I somewhere and pull things out of it. This could be a darker tone. And maybe I'm pulling out little textural things out of it. I could pull some grass out of it where it hits the ground and do it that way. Does that make sense?
So where would you like use this technique for? Like, would it be like in like the shadows in the background?
For what?
For like,
This?
yeah.
There's a million different ways. Ted Kotsky used to do a thing where he would he might have like, I don't know, some foliage here. And maybe the forest gets a little darker back here, because the forest is just a bunch of noise once you get through it. And he might draw this positive shape. As it comes through a dark shape, he'd pull a negative shape. Like, he would do stuff like that. It was really cool. It was a real cool little design thing. He did a lot of really chiseled, you know, I could take that, create a little fence. Again, I like to pull the top out. I could build a little fence like that. Down here would be. You can also have a building and then over here, oops, too big. And like not even have this line. And butt this shape up against that shape, and let that organic shape create this geometry, this geometric shape. Does that make sense? So sometimes I want to lose a line altogether. To me, a pencil is a painting tool. That's just how I see it, right? We could take water bird, duck or something. Let's do we could go give him his little reflection that way, right? Now, if he was darker, I could put the little dark reflections in there. And get that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. We could take let's say these are pines again. By the way, dark object, lighter reflection, lighter object, darker reflection in water. Okay? I don't know why that is, but it is.
Can you repeat that one more time?
They're opposites. If it's a dark object, it'll reflect lighter. If it's a light object, it will reflect darker. I don't know why. It's some sort of dark magic, as Frank likes to say. You know, and I could reinforce this too, by the way.
Like we're drawing water, are we ever going to like draw palms and stuff like that?
Yeah, through there. Right? Yeah?
Like water, like lakes and stuff like that?
Well, sometimes there's water where we go.
I think just asking specifically if we're gonna have like a section on it, like we have a foliage section
Yeah.
and a building section.
Oh, no, I can do that if you guys want.
That'd be good.
You know, and I could. Here's the trick with this. So let's do a little darker. So we got these trees on the shoreline, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're gonna go. But what really makes it work is if I come back over on top of it and put a couple highlights. And see how it starts to reflect,
Wow.
feel like water?
Yeah.
Simple,
Yeah.
right? That works in almost everything. But what's the trick? This reflects, then you pull out some highlights. You could be going, you could do, I don't know if I can do this fast, let's see. Graveyard. Maybe there's a, you know, normally I'd put the whole tree in here, but I don't have, you know, creepy tree. blank for tombstones for some reason. See, I'm getting a line. These could go a little darker. Lights over here. Actually, this will probably be pretty diffused because I want it to be foggy. Hopefully it's dark enough. You could come through here and start pulling out fog. Does that make sense? I have a really cool example of this in my office. I'll pull it out. I think I do anyway. Now it gets a little misty.
That's cool.
Right? And then I could go around the misty. Now I could go in the back and go, maybe the back here it's a little lighter, so I can pop everything a little bit. Then I would come back in here and just, where it's not hitting the fog, I could probably darken it a little bit. See, this will pull out a little, this will pull out more. See, I can pull within those and it'll look really nice. So I got a soft thing and then I'll go a little more hard thing with this. You know, and it gets a little more misty. Make sense?
Yeah.
What else? Oh, something like a water or a cocktail glass. That's what I'll be having this evening. Then tomorrow will be useless. Let's start off with this one.
There's a lot going on this page. There's like 5 different
That's good.
things.
It looks like Wonderland.
The reason I do it is because it's all in one video.
Yeah, of course.
Oops,
Very
way
down.
over there, sorry. It's very wet. These, okay, so here's the trick with this kind of thing. If I got wine, I just usually do this with the side of my pencil, really. The trick with this, it doesn't hit the edges. Does that make sense? Anywhere there's heavy glass, like here, it'll get little dark reflections in there, and here. And then so I got 2 levels of highlight. This is very soft, this is more, you know. Where it hits the ground here, I might go a little heavier. And we get a little wine glass. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
These, same deal. But let's go a little further. You know, sometimes on the top it'll have a little reflection coming out of the top. This, I'm gonna pull this forward a little bit. Down here you'll get these hard reflections. Then I can sort of just indicate ice. Now it's already indicated, you can kind of see it, right? But if I come in here and I go, now it's really ice, right? Then I can come in here and go, bourbon. That's my favorite.
Tracks.
What?
I said tracks.
What does that mean?
That makes sense.
I like a little more light down in here. I'm trying to get that back. And mine's poison because I'm giving it to a student.
Your line.
So mine, if you get a drink like this, or it's all whoop 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 and all fizzy, I'm trying to poison it.
It's got antifreeze in it.
It's got antifreeze in it. If it looks really weirdly green,
It's melon flavored.
yeah, it's a melon
Turn
drink.
out of it.
Or green apple. I think I might do wicked medicine.
Dear poison apple.
Poison apple. In cahoots with Nick now. Poisoning kids and stuff.
Now that I saw him in that van, I'm
Yeah,
recording
that's how
him.
you got inspiration.
I'm gonna record
So
him.
How to
drink
get away
came
with
from?
murder.
It's where the what?
That's where the drink came from.
Murder tag team.
Okay, questions?
It's a whole
I'm
operation.
trying to think if there's anything I'm missing here. Questions? Okay, here's another quick thing about this kind of thing. Is the mountains go back like that? Okay, so if you're seeing a mountain close, let's pretend that's a mountain. You'll notice you get these really dark shadow values on it, right? As it goes back, these shadow values and this value are going to get closer together. This is not going to be as dark compared to this. This is going to get much closer to this. This will get lighter, and these will get lighter and closer to this value. So if this is a 4, these might be a 2.
Nice.
Where this might be a 6, and these are like a 9 or an 8. You know, it's dark. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they can get pretty dark when you're fairly close to them, and then they get faint and further away as they get further away. Because they always talk about overall value dipping away, but your values all get closer together. Just in general way back there. And then way out here, there's a farm. Now I can put these little, I can put a little fence around it. And then maybe, let's get rid of this. Tractor out here. Making a horror movie about what goes on at Nick's creepy farm. You know, and there's a little road that comes out here.
No way.
And it goes here, and then it comes up here. Right? And then I could go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It'll go and then lose itself over here and then come back up here. I could go here.
At what point in the road do you start adding texture, or do you just not do it at all?
I could start adding. Well, if it's up here, I might add texture. But one thing, I'm gonna have the edge of the road.
It's kind of grass.
It's grassy. Yeah, it might have a little bit of. Maybe it'll have a. Probably wouldn't on a mountain road, but like this. You know, maybe it's got the little center line. And then I could carry this idea. Then I could go here, and then like if the light's here, you know, and I could put a little, this is close, so I can put a little green on these. No, not. Because now I'm getting close, right? So that helps the drawing also, is if I start, you know, this is going to have... And then, you know, I could have also made it... barbed wire. Right? That all make sense?
Yeah.
If this is just an open valley, I might put my my grid back there. And I put some little indications of buildings. Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I could do that. Then you'd have these mountains behind that. Trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. But see how we're just indicating things with like this? We're just indicating. But it reads. Reads is whatever it is. Whatever. This I could go a little more soft. That's like that. Yeah, like that. Indicating a lot, right? We're mostly indicating, okay? So texture. When you break a silhouette, you're going to get more leaf information or silhouette information. With things like glass like this, don't let it touch the edge. It makes more, you know, because that glass has thickness to it. You know, I'm exaggerating it slightly, but sometimes I'm not. Those big, heavy cocktail glasses sometimes are pretty thick. So it's not hitting the edge. It's just not. It's like a little cup within a cup. When you put in a reflection, swipe that highlight right over it, and it'll really read. You can do things like that too with windows and things. This is just a ripple idea, same thing. Rocks are planes, so learn how to break them down into whatever the component planes are. Okay, we talked about that. All the different things this pencil can do, because right now we're talking about pencil. And now we got value, but we want to put the value down clean. Okay, and get controlled. So you want to If you notice when I'm hitting these, now here's another thing. If I sometimes I kind of deliberately overshoot things, depending on what they are, like something like this, like a building. I can hit it pretty good. I can hit it almost spot on, but sometimes I like to carve this edge out. It has a different, see how it has a different look? When you carve that edge, watch. That's a cool look, I think. Okay? Can light these up now. It's not, could be nighttime. And then we could put, let's go dark. Sorry, you guys, once I start doing this, I don't like to stop. Now I could go, here's a street sign, or street, whatever you call it. Could light that up. That means this will light up down here. Could put a car here, driving. I could put headlights on it. Put another building back here. Maybe there's some big buildings back here. It's in LA. Behind it, and I can go. See, and we can just start to build a little scene in there. Right? That's how you work quick. Okay? Now, this isn't all about quick. Okay? What I want you guys to understand is it's not. Speed will happen. Okay? What I'm trying to do is give you all the tools where that'll happen. But you got to do it all the time. And then speed will happen. And by the way, carry this into everything else. What's the secret to everything you're going to learn? Technique. Repetition of technique, and fun, because the way you'll repeat technique is if it's fun. Does that make sense? If I'm sitting here on location and I got to do grids and shit, I ain't having fun. That's just not fun to me. I want vibe, I want feeling, I want information, I want accuracy, I want all that stuff, but I want it to be fun, because if it's fun, I will keep doing it, right? I don't practice, I draw. I go out and I draw. I don't practice. Does that make sense? I draw because I like drawing. Yeah. I paint because I like drawing. I'm getting ready for like a thing I'm doing over at Disney. That's a little more, I got to get a few things together. You know, I got to make sure I got all my ducks in a row when I do something like that, right? So that's a little different, but I still go out and just have fun, more or less. I just go, oh, I'll focus on this thing that I'm going to go do my talk and all that stuff over there on, you know, and I'll focus on that. But I like doing that anyway. And it's like, good, it's going to make you do that. And switch up your game, because you're not always doing that. Because drawing's the fastest thing you can really just do, so you tend to do that the most. I think, anyway. So it makes me change up my game, which is good. Same thing with this one. If the light's up here, this bamboo, I could come in here and by the way, the line has to be relative to the rest of the value. If you notice, I punched that a little too hard. See, that's popping a little too much? Just like anything else, if your values are off, so this really needs to be about there. That's a little better. Smudging is dangerous, okay? But it's effective sometimes. So it might be...
Start sketching like McDonald's or something?
Yeah, more or less. Well, what I'm really relying on here is sockets, shadow values, right? I'm not trying to make a great drawing, obviously. So to your point, yeah, I like to use that lighter thing and I punch it. I just did that with one pencil, right? I'm going to beat that out of you one way or the other. You know, and then I put in the shadow values. But do you see how much structure I can get right away? I'm starting to get structure, okay? I'm just trying to make this look, at least, I'm not gonna spend a bunch of time on it, but. And then I can go into these eye sockets and start putting, you know, and I can start putting that, and I can put the nostril in there. I can put that. So what I like it for is things like this. I can smudge that nose a little bit and I can get a highlight. You know what I mean? So I like it for that. And the nose will get a little warmth on it, so I can get away with that. By the way, another thing is sometimes I don't erase, I lift. See how much I lift it out? Sometimes that's a better way to do it. Sometimes it makes a nice texture. And I'll talk about this later, but once you put the superstructure of the hair in, then you can put a stray hair in there, okay? Another thing I can do with this is I could give him a 3-day beard. But I gotta go back in here and reinforce my line. And I gotta put this shadow value back into under his nose. Right? Something like a cheek. I don't really do it on guys as much, but on a woman I might soften up that cheek a little bit. I might come in here, and then I'm going to carve this excess out. You know, I might lift it a little bit if I think it's too much. See, that's real subtle. I like that. Ears get a little bit of value because they have a little warmth. So those are cases where I might smudge a little bit. But it's real minimal. Make sense? That's too much, too dark. Okay. So too dark, pull it back out. Hmm? So now, if you put those eyes in there into those sockets, it's a little better, right? Then we could do this. Carry the laugh line down a little bit. Now he's getting older. Gotta be careful it's not too hard edged. Like the neck. Robbing him of all his youth. This would actually be lighter, probably. Now he's older, right? And what's the secret to that? And I'll show you guys that later when we get to people. But secret is his gravity. If I tell you guys to age up a character, you're going to put a bunch of lines.